Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you. My name's James JP Pearce, and I am the founder of Life of an ECT, primary teacher, former senior leader, staff governor. If you've seen the stuff on our website and on the Twitter feed, you'll know the sort of things that we do on Life of an ECT. But today we're doing our first live stream of 2023. It's been a while. In fact, we didn't do any live webinars or anything last year in 2022. So it's nice to be back doing some live stuff with you brilliant people across the UK. And we've got some people that are watching this afternoon as part of our live stream. So a big thank you to all of you who have supported us and got involved. Today's webinar is a short one. We should be finished by 5 o'clock easily so that you can get on with your Thursday evenings. But we wanted to do something to talk about the strike action because obviously we found out on Monday that members of the NEU, National Education Union, are going to be striking in February and March. And as an ECT, that is something that you won't have experienced before. In fact, I'm really lucky, if you can call it lucky, because I was involved in the strikes back in 2014. I was an NQT at the time, so it was my first year in teaching as well. And I remember how daunting it was having to come up and be involved with this strike action and not really knowing what it was all about. So for ECTs across the UK, that's very much something that at the moment you may not understand what that involves, what it's going to look like for you. But to be fair, also that's going to be the case for any teacher who has started teaching in the last 7, 8, 9 years. It's something that a lot of us are not familiar with. So the idea of this afternoon's session is to give you some ideas about what's happening, some context and some information behind the scenes. So let's take a little look. This is a Q&A as well. I know that a lot of people, 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, are probably sitting in the classrooms marking, so might have us on in the background. But if you do have any questions as we go through, please feel free to send them over. It'd be great to have them with us. You've got the YouTube live chat. You've got our Twitter feed as well, at Life of ECT, and you can find us on email as well, Life of an NQT, sorry, we haven't updated that one, at gmail.com. So if you do want to send over some information, or you've got a question that you'd like us to answer, then yeah, please do send that over to us this afternoon. It would be great to have that one as part of our discussion. So the idea of this session this afternoon really is to give you a little bit of a flavour, some information on the upcoming teacher strikes, helping you to make that decision and to support your understanding. What we're not going to do today is I'm not going to tell you that you need to strike or that you don't need to strike. As a practicing teacher and a member of a union as well, I will make the decision, as many of the teachers across the United Kingdom, or England and Wales I should say, will when it comes to the strike action in February and March. I haven't made my decision. I'm not going to encourage you to do the same yet. You may already have your decision, but just want to know what sort of details you need to know to make sure that you get the most out of the strike. It may be that you don't want to strike and you're sort of thinking about how that's going to look. So there's not going to be any sway here to make you go one way or the other. All I want to give you this afternoon is to give you some information so that you can make that informed decision. A chance to ask questions, and as we said, you can do so on Twitter this afternoon, on the YouTube chat, and also on email. You can ask us questions about what's going to happen on the strike days, but also how it might impact you as well, because obviously that's something that is important. And I've tailored this to ECTs because that's our brand, that's what we do at Life of an ECT. But obviously I want to cover the issues for all teachers affected, and we've been talking about this on social media quite a lot in the last 4 days, between lessons and marking and stuff as well. So yeah, if you've got questions and you're not an ECT, or even if you're a trainee teacher as well, then please do send them in, because we can give you a little bit of an insight. And for those of you who joined us on Eventbrite, so got your free e-ticket, then I'll be sending over the slides later on this evening. And for all of you, there's the chance to have the YouTube video, which will be up on our YouTube channel on demand, so you can watch that as much as you need to. Go back to it, revisit between now and when the strikes go on. So a quick little bit of information about the Life of an ECT blog, because it makes sense to put a little bit in. It's a resource for early teachers across the UK. Obviously, the strike action information that I've got for you guys today is about England and Wales, but the blog is there for anybody really. If you are new to teaching. It's something that we've been working on since 2013. This will be the 10-year anniversary of me starting life of an ECT, because this will be 10 years, or my 10th year in teaching. And when I graduated from Kingston University and was asked to input into the NQT programme at the time, that's how Life of an ECT came about. So all of our social media content and interaction is there to support you through your training, your ECT years, of course, the 2 of them now, and hopefully this will give you a bit of a flavour of what we do this afternoon, and hopefully will help you to stick around with us. So let's start talking about the strike and how we got to the situation that we are in. Many of us know that we have got strike action coming up, and this all came from the NEU strike ballot, which was called, and we had the results of that one announced on Monday this week. The ballot closed on Friday last week. And what I've got there is some screenshots from the NEU website to give us a little bit more context. So the question that was put to members is, are you prepared to take strike action in the furtherance of this dispute? For England, it was nearly 90.5% that voted yes, on a turnout of 53%. And as we know from the NASUWT ballot, there needed to be 50% of members that cast their ballot, which is why the NASUWT are not striking, because the turnout not quite high enough. In Wales, it was just over 92% that voted yes, on a higher turnout of 58%. So it means that for England and for Wales, the ballot can go ahead. It has met the quota of people that needed to put their ballot in, but also it had a majority. So it means that England and Wales will be striking. 7 days of strike action have then been announced in February and March, though any individual school will only be affected by 4 of them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The first will be on Wednesday, the 1st of February. All schools in England and Wales, for that one, 23,400 schools. There'll also be teacher members in sixth form colleges who will also take action on these days, but with a separate dispute. So it is a big, widespread ballot. You can see on the right-hand side there the figures, 121,000 members voting yes, 12,000 voting no, and a similar story percentage and proportion wise in Wales as well. So this was a huge ballot, the biggest ballot that we've had in a long, long time in teaching, and lots of people getting their opinions forward and involved with that one. So in terms of the timeline, as we mentioned, there are 7 days of strike action set out by the NEU, and you can see those there in front of you. So on the 1st of February, all schools will be able to do strike action. All schools in England and Wales will be under that one. On the 14th of February, it's just Wales. Of course, for England, that will be half term. Then on the 28th of February, Northern England, Northwest, Yorkshire and Humber, those areas will all be striking. On the 1st of March, East Midlands, West Midlands and Eastern. On the 2nd of March, London, South East and South West. And on the 15th and 16th of March, those final 2 days, then it'll be, again, all schools in England and Wales. So all eligible members, and that's really important to say with this one, it's only members of the NEU union that can strike. All eligible members can strike for up to 4 days of the 7 from this timeline. It may be that if you are in Wales, for example, that you strike on the 1st, 14th, 15th and 16th, so the first 2 in Feb, the second 2, the dates in March, or it may be that you just strike for one of them. There's nothing to say that you have to strike for all 4 of the days that you're eligible for. You could strike for 1 or 2, 3 or 4, completely up to you. And again, that decision solely is with you as you go through. Now, in terms of what the strike's for, it's really important, and again, something that as part of the media at the moment, there is a little bit of a loss, I suppose, coming away from the statement, as a lot of people are speculating and debating why teachers are striking. In terms of the NEU strike announcement, as you can see on the screen there, it says, "We've continually raised our concerns with successive education secretaries about teaching and support staff pay and its funding in schools and colleges, but instead of seeking to resolve the issue, they've sat on their hands. It's disappointing that the government prefers to talk about yet more draconian anti-strike legislation rather than working with us to address the causes of strike action. A little bit further down the statement, it says the government have also been happy to sit by as their own recruitment targets are routinely missed. Teachers are leaving in their drones, a third gone within 5 years of qualifying. It's a scandalous waste of talent and taxpayers' money, yet the government seem unbothered about the conditions they are allowing schools and colleges to slide into. The reasons for the recruitment and retention crisis are not a mystery. The reports in the last week from the IFS and the NFER confirm the NEU argument. So obviously the overarching issue that the strike is aiming on and focusing on is pay for teacher and support staff, obviously within the cost of living crisis, looking at inflation and real-time pay cuts or rises. That is the big one, but there are lots of other reasons behind the scenes that the union are also looking at recruitment targets and the government's approach to education in general. Again, having spoken to a lot of teachers across lots of different schools over social media, I know that many teachers are considering striking, not just because of pay, but overall school budgets and many things that they are unhappy about in our industry. So the strike is there to focus on pay and funding, but there is a lot more behind it. And again, it's up to you with your decision if you want to strike or not. Although you're considering pay has got to be an issue that you're striking for, it might be an opportunity to bring other things into the forefront. So a useful document came out on Monday. It's published by the DfE, and it's guidance for schools in handling strike action. And this is the document that I've used to get a lot of the information that I'm going to show you in this next little section, because it tells us what to expect. It tells us the rules around strike action. And although it is aimed at school leaders and keeping schools open on those strike days, which of course the Education Secretary has said she wants to prioritise and try to achieve, it also gives us an idea as teachers on what the strike day might look like. So, for example, as I said earlier on, it's been a long time since the last teacher strike in England and Wales. 2014, in March, was the last one. I know that because we had the Ofsted call on the strike day, which means that I ended up going in, despite the fact that I did go on strike back in 2014. Since then, we've got 8 years of teachers that haven't experienced this process. So, if you decide to strike, these are the things that you should check beforehand. You must check that you're a member of the NEU union. If you are not a member of the striking union, so for example, if you are an NASUWT member, then it's actually unlawful for you to strike. So you open yourself up to legal challenge and possibly disciplinary action if you do strike and you're not a member of the NEU, but you are a member of another teaching union. You do have the time to change unions, and I know that there have been some teachers that have done that, have left other teaching unions and joined the NEU so that they can strike. You can also strike as a non-union teacher. Now that's got a slightly greater risk of repercussions, but it is something that people do. So the NASUWT are saying if you strike and you're a member of their union, then it's unlawful, but not if you're a non-union teacher, if you're not belonging to a union. Other things that can happen or you should do before the strike, you can, but you don't have to tell your school if you plan to strike or not. I know, again, from looking at social media, many schools, many head teachers and senior leaders have asked their staff if they are planning to strike. The important thing to say there is that you can give them the heads up if you want to, but you don't have to. Thinking back to 2014, I remember the head teacher at the school that I was at the time saying to us, look, I would like to know, but you don't actually have to tell me. You can just ring up on the morning and say, I'm striking today, and that is the situation. Obviously, head teachers will ask you to do that because they will want to come up with some sort of arrangement and manage the situation in school, but you don't have to do that for them. You can get in contact with your union to find out more about picket lines and strike events that you might want to attend. Again, back in 2014, there were big protests up in London. Picket lines at schools do happen. You might have seen them at stations, for example, with the RMT and the ASLEF union strikes recently. There are rules around picket lines, and the NEU are working those out as well as in this DFE document. So for example, you can't have more than 6 members of staff at a picket line at a school. And if you do go to a picket line at a school, you can only go to the one at the school that you are working at. So there are big rules about that. You can't have groups of 40 members of staff from the same school at their school. At the same time, you can't have members of staff if you're part of a federation or a partnership. You can't go to another school. It's got to be the one that you are teaching at. Check with your school. I don't know why I've written social there. Apologies. Check with your school and social media policies. That's what I meant to say about speaking publicly. Although you are striking, be very, very careful. A lot of schools have got clauses in staff handbooks and contracts which say that you are not allowed to talk publicly to news outlets, for example. Anything that can be controversial, bring the school into disrepute. Be very, very careful with that. What I'm doing this evening is fine because I'm not giving an opinion. And I, as I said, haven't made a decision myself yet anyway, so I can't really give an opinion. But if you are giving an opinion, or if you are involved in news coverage on strike day, for example, that is something to be very careful about. Worth speaking with an SLT member or your ECT mentor or head teacher or whoever about that. And the other thing is that you don't have to set any work or cover, but you can if you wish. So if your school is deciding that it is going to close because there are not enough members of staff in to meet the ratios, which is what happened in 2014 at the school I was in. There were 3 members of staff who didn't strike, the rest of the teaching staff did, and therefore there weren't enough members of staff in to cover the ratios of the children safely, and therefore the school closed for the day. Now, particularly with the prevalence of remote learning and all of the great byproducts of the pandemics, there had to be some positive, then we do have the remote learning option available to us, and that is something that we are able to use on strike day. So you can set work or cover, but you don't have to, and your school can't make you. That's really important to say that as well. On the day, if you choose to strike, you're not required to enter your workplace. In fact, you shouldn't enter your workplace. Also, you are not required to attend a picket line. So again, you don't need to go and picket and protest. Of course, the union will encourage you to do so because it makes the message stronger, but you don't have to, and you shouldn't feel forced to. If you are attending an event, find out the details before you travel and represent your union as you see appropriate for you. Again, the whole thing is your decision. And consider the cause and how best to fight for what you are striking for if you make that decision. I've put that one in. That probably is the most loaded of the comments in here. It's not meant to be at all. But of course, if you're making that decision to strike, particularly as a brand new teacher, then consider what you are striking for and how best to fight for what you believe in. The reason I say that is because, as I said, from my experience as an NQT, I went on strike in 2014, and one of the reasons I did that is because that was what the majority of the staff in my school were doing, and I felt I had to. So if you are not sure about the decision and you're not sure if you want to strike, and I've seen a lot of ECTs feeling quite overwhelmed, it's not just one strike day, it's 4, and the public perception this time round is very strong. Consider whether it is what you want to do, and take the best course of action for your opinions and your thoughts, is what I would say for that one. In terms of after the strike, you'll be expected to return back to your workplace for the next working day, and obviously that, I suppose, is what everybody expects. So if you are on a strike day, then you should be back for your next working day, obviously unless you're ill or something like that. If you don't strike, well, as I said, you are just as entitled not to strike, and I want to make that point really clear. It is completely up to you, your decision. You'll be expected to be in work as normal unless the school is closed. As I mentioned earlier on, staffing levels may cause that to happen if there's not enough people. It may be that if you are saying that you're working as normal, you decide not to strike, you could do remote learning from home. Again, you'll be directed as usual, following the guidance of your head teacher, your school, your governors. However, a really important point, and I thought this was very interesting actually from the DFE guidance, if you are a teacher that's employed under the School Teachers Pay and Conditions document, so the Burgundy Book, you are not compelled to provide cover. So if you are a teacher in a state school, so this may not apply for academies or private schools, independent schools, because they don't always come under the Burgundy Book. But if you are a teacher in a state school and you are employed by the council or learning authority, or you are under the school teacher's pay and conditions document, you cannot be made to provide cover for other teachers that are striking. That includes if your, for example, year group partner goes on strike and they bring the two classes together, you are not compelled either to be there to provide cover or to set work. So the whole point of strike action, obviously, is to cause disruption. And in similar sort of ways to redundancy, you can't just fill the role in if it's a role that somebody's on strike for. So that is something that's important to remember. However, if you are a supply teacher, and obviously there was the legislation change around this at the end of 2022, if you're a supply teacher or you provide cover or you're a cover supervisor, and that's your role anyway, then you can then be told to directly cover somebody because there has been that change where cover can now be provided as long as that is their normal job. If your school has a picket line and you are not striking, you are entitled and expected to cross it. Now, this is a big thing that I wanted to mention because I thought this could be quite daunting. But in the vast majority of situations, it's not an issue. So again, back in 2014, if I hadn't have been striking, I know that the up to 6 colleagues on the picket line outside of my school wouldn't have taken it personally if I decided to go in. Of course, it's an NEU strike, so if there are any NASUWT members at your school, or if you are one of those members, then obviously you can't strike, and therefore your colleagues can't hold that against you, that you're not in the union that's striking. So do not be threatened or worried or anything like that about crossing that picket line in that situation. Now, the big question that I've seen a lot on social media is about pay. Unsurprisingly, because if you strike, then you will lose pay for that. You'll not be paid for any day that you strike. As it says from the DFE guidance, again, with the school teachers' conditions pay document and the Burgundy Book as well, employees are not entitled to be paid for any period during which they are on strike. There is statutory protection against any deduction of wages not applying in relation to strike or other industrial action. The calculation of pay deductions for unauthorised absence is not determined by the Secretary of State, but it's important that these schools act fairly and proportionately when making pay deductions. What that means is that if you are in a state school, just like I said earlier on, then you will lose pay covered by the Burgundy Book. You are guaranteed with that one, and what you'll actually lose is 1/365th of your annual salary instead of the 195th that you might expect, because that's how many days we have to do in school every year. If you are not in a school which is underneath the Burgundy Book, then schools can make their own rules. However, again, it can't be hugely disproportionate, and therefore you do have some sort of protection on that. So in terms of pay, I've calculated it. If you are an ECT on MPS 1, so the first point in the main pay scale, that will come out at, if you're in England and Wales, generally just over or nearly £77 per day that you strike. For fringe, it's just over 80. Outer London, just under 90. And for inner London, £94.53. So that is how much pay you will lose per day that you strike. Therefore, if you are in inner London and you strike for 4 days, you will have £378.12 taken off of your pay packet. It depends on the school and the payroll systems when that comes off. So it might be that the 2 earlier ones in February, if you're in Wales, for example, come out of February's pay packet. The 2 at the end on the 15th and 16th of March come out in March's pay packet. So keep an eye on that one. The area that I am in, for example, our payday is the 22nd and payroll finishes, I think it's a week before. So if I went on strike in March, then it could be that the March days come out of the April pay packet. It all depends on how your school works, but that is the sort of monetary figures that you need to be thinking about in that element. Will you be treated differently based on your decision? Well, the short answer for that one is no. Schools are not allowed to treat staff members any differently, negatively or differently based on the decision to strike or not. If you feel that's happening, contact your union, really, really important. And if you're having any issues with colleagues, you can follow your school's complaints or whistleblowing policy, because obviously that is unfair treatment within school. If there is anything from the head teacher, then of course you can go through advice from your union, and I would go to the union about that one. It shouldn't have any bearing later on as well. So if you are on a temporary contract or a short-term contract, any strike action should not be recorded in a decision to extend your contract. It shouldn't affect probationary periods, anything like that. If it does, and a school decides not to renew your temporary contract or probationary period just based on the strike, obviously if it's a short-term contract, it may be that actually there isn't a job to continue on with, then that could be down the grounds of unfair dismissal, and again the union is where you need to get involved with that one. However, short answer, no, most schools won't have a problem with that, and you'll tend to find that a lot of the head teachers, because of the issues that the strike is discussing, like pay and school funding, a lot of them, even if they can't be on your side officially, will understand where you are coming from and will support the fact that you are striking. So that's something that's important to remember as you go through. Now, parental and public opinions. As I mentioned earlier on, the majority of parental and public opinions will be negative on this one. And this is something that I wanted to mention because it's something that we don't deal with very well in teaching. If you are in the celebrity world, as we've heard in the news in the last few years, or you go on a reality TV program or whatever, they try and support you through the social media. They tell you not to look on Twitter and things like that when your episodes are on, if you go on a game show, for example. The parental and public opinion already since Monday has been quite negative. There have been some people that have really been shouting from the rooftops positively, and some of the comments from the education secretary actually got a very positive public opinion, which I was quite surprised about, but really impressed with and quite grateful for. So there will be a lot of negative opinion out there. Strikes by their very nature are disruptive, and those that and the strikes that are going on at the moment come in the midst of strike action from many different industries. It's been a very turbulent time, thinking back to the end of 2022 with rail strikes. Obviously, we've got nurse strikes going on. There's nurse strikes going on today. There is a lot of strike action, and the public opinion of striking is not very positive, and it's getting worse as more and more strikes go on. Opinions may feel more personal for us, though. Compared to male staff, nurses, rail staff, all of those sorts of things, because we're more closely linked to our pupils and parents. Again, going back to my experience in the past, it felt quite strange and quite tricky to come into work the next day and face the parents after I had the strike day. As it was, we had Ofsted the next day, so we were all quite busy to worry about the strike that had happened the day before. But it isn't easy to face those parents, because obviously we know that we have caused disruption for them and for the children, particularly after a couple of years of pandemics and lockdowns. But there is support with that one, and you will find there are parents who support you, particularly if they are listening to the messages about the fact that this is about school funding as well as pay. If you are struggling though with the decision, either before, during or after your strikes, your union are there, so the NEU. If you need help and you need consideration, you need to ask some questions and think about things. Your colleagues are there, your ECT mentor, SLT, all of those I'm sure will be there to listen and to help you to come to some conclusions and some thoughts around your decision. Other teacher friends, not just from your school, but from other schools, particularly as an ECT, you've just come out of training program, you might have teacher friends now that are all across the country, so speak to them. And many schools have got an employee assistance program, counselling, those sorts of elements. So if you are really affected by it and struggling with either a backlash of public opinion or parental opinion, or just the stress and unease and anxiety around the strikes, there are people there to help you make the most of them and use them. Okay, they are there for you. Lovely. So that is it for me. As I said, a very short session this afternoon, less than 30 minutes, just to give you the ins and outs of the strike action, what you can expect as an ECT, and what you need to know, I think, just to make an informed decision about that one. As I've said, Decision is totally up to you. If you strike or not for 1, 2, 3, 4 of the days, completely up to you. All I would say is that keep your eyes open on social media. Look at the usual hashtags of Edu Twitter and Teacher Twitter. Join the discussion with your colleagues. Of course, there'll be the public opinion out there as well, but join the discussion of your colleagues. Have a think about what's going on there. We've not had any questions that's come in, which I'm hoping means we've had quite a comprehensive chat. But if you do want to ask questions, if you're watching this on Catch Up on the YouTube channel, then the Twitter feed, as always, is at lifeofECT. And you can email me as well, lifeofanect@gmail.com, and I'll try and answer as many of those as I can in the days and weeks heading up to that strike action. So a big thank you for joining us this afternoon for a webinar, the first one of 2023. We hope to have a lot more of these coming up about various different things over the coming months. If you've got any more ideas of what we could do for webinars, then please do get in contact with us on that Twitter feed, as I said, at lifeofECT. In the meantime, the very best of luck for the rest of Spring 1, and whatever you decide to do in terms of the strike action, I hope that everything goes well for you. I hope it's not a stressful experience, and that I hope you manage to get your point across whichever side of the debate that you are on. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and I look forward to speaking to you again really soon.